The Addams family is the family of your dreams. Don't agree? Stay till the end. You might change your mind. Today we're looking at this family through the lens of psychology. Not at why they're strange, but at why, underneath all the darkness and the comedy, they get so many things right that most normal families quietly get wrong. But first, a little context. Because where the Addams family came from matters. The Addams Family started not as a TV show or a film, but as a single-panel cartoon in the New Yorker magazine. Charles Addams began drawing them in 1938. When the TV series launched in 1964, America was deep in the era of the perfect family, the kind you saw on every other sitcom. Father knows best. Mother is always smiling. Children are polite and well-adjusted. The house is clean. Nobody argues. The Addams family was a direct response to that image. Not a rejection of family values, but a satire on the performance of them. That's not an accident. It wasn't just drawing gothic comedy. The Addams family was asking a question. What if the family that everyone calls abnormal is actually the one doing it right? By the time the 1991 film arrived, the Addams family had already lived through 3 decades of television, animation, and cultural commentary. The specific details changed, different actors, different tone, different era, but the core remained untouched. In the next section, we're going to look at the relationship at the center of it all, Gomez and Morticia, because everything else in this family flows from what happens between those two. And what happens between those two is, frankly, remarkable. Most fictional couples thrive on tension. Misunderstandings, jealousy, unspoken resentment masked as passion. It creates drama, but it also quietly teaches us that love is supposed to feel exhausting, uncertain, or conditional. Gomez and Morticia Addams don't work that way. They are genuinely, visibly, almost embarrassingly in love. After years of marriage, with 2 children, even in the middle of financial ruin and family chaos. Psychologically, almost everything about how they relate is textbook healthy. The single strongest predictor of long-term relationship satisfaction isn't just chemistry or attraction, it's deep value alignment. 2 people who see the world through the same lens, who find meaning in the same places. Gomez and Morticia have this completely. They don't just tolerate each other's interests, they share them. The darkness, the macabre, the theatrical excess, this isn't one person accommodating the other. It's both of them fully aligned. When Morticia tends her carnivorous plants or cuts the buds off roses, leaving nothing but the thorns, Gomez doesn't roll his eyes. When Gomez blows up his model trains, Morticia doesn't suggest a more sensible hobby. Their world is the same world. That alignment removes one of the biggest hidden sources of relationship breakdown, the constant feeling of being fundamentally misunderstood by the person closest to you. Gomez worships Morticia. It's obvious, constant, and completely unironic. He kisses her hand, calls her his life, his darkness, his everything. In a lesser story, this would look like unhealthy dependency, one person dissolving into another. But Gomez is not a man without a self. He has passions, opinions, energy, presence. He worships her because he genuinely sees her as extraordinary, from a place of fullness, not emptiness. That's the key distinction. Admiration from strength is empowering. Admiration from weakness is suffocating. Morticia receives his devotion without being diminished by it. She is calm where he is chaotic, measured where he is impulsive. She doesn't need his validation to feel whole, but she accepts and returns his love with quiet intensity. 2 complete people choosing each other. That's the model. One of the most psychologically telling moments comes with Uncle Fester. Gomez wants to believe immediately. This is his long-lost brother, family returned after 25 years. He opens his arms without hesitation. Morticia is not convinced. She watches, notices inconsistencies, holds doubts. And here's what she does not do. She doesn't demand Gomez share her skepticism, doesn't push, doesn't create conflict or issue ultimatums. She simply continues to observe and trusts that the truth will emerge. She holds her own perspective without needing to win. She respects Gomez's need to believe without abandoning her own judgment. No power struggle. No, I told you so, waiting at the end. Just two independent people operating within the same secure bond. This is emotional maturity in its most practical form. When everything collapses, the house, the money, their social standing, the relationship doesn't crack. Nobody blames, nobody resents. Morticia goes to work without drama. Gomez grieves without guilt. They support each other without turning the crisis into additional stress. Psychologists studying couples in hardship find the same pattern consistently. It's not the crisis that breaks relationships. It's whether the bond itself feels safe enough to weather it. For Gomez and Morticia, it clearly does. Their partnership remains a source of stability, not another source of pain. A relationship like theirs doesn't exist in a vacuum. It shapes everything around it, including how they raise their children. And the way the Addams Family parents is, in its own strange way, just as instructive as the marriage at its center. Wednesday, Addams practices archery, often on her brother. Pugsley builds explosives and treats electrocution as a hobby. By any conventional standard, these children would raise safeguarding concerns. And yet, watch how they move through the world. They are confident, articulate, self-possessed. They know exactly who they are. They don't seem anxious, lost, or defensive when challenged. Whatever is happening in that household is producing remarkably solid children. That's not despite the parenting. It's because of it. Gomez and Morticia are deeply involved parents. They show up at the school play, at family moments. They pay attention to what their children are doing and take it seriously. But involvement never turns into control. They don't redirect Wednesday's morbid interests or Pugsley's destructive experiments toward something more acceptable. They support whatever the children are drawn to without trying to reshape them. This is the essence of autonomy-supportive parenting. Research shows that when parents guide and set boundaries while respecting the child's own perspective and inner world, children develop stronger intrinsic motivation, higher self-esteem, and better emotional regulation. They act from desire, not fear. Wednesday doesn't fake enthusiasm. Pugsley doesn't pretend to like normal things. They are fully themselves, because no one has demanded otherwise. There is no shouting, humiliation, threats, or emotional withdrawal in the Addams household. When correction is needed, it's calm, direct, and drama-free. This isn't pure permissiveness. Gomez and Morticia have clear expectations, and the children know the family's values, but communication preserves dignity. You can be redirected without being shamed. This aligns with what psychologists call authoritative parenting: warm, structured, responsive, and consistent. Neither authoritarian, where obedience is demanded and questioning is punished, nor permissive, where anything goes. Firm in principle, gentle in delivery. The most powerful gift parents can give is the experience of being genuinely seen, noticed for who the child specifically is, what they care about, what excites them. Gomez and Morticia do this. They engage with the children's interests with real attention, not obligation. They praise specifically and authentically. They play alongside rather than just supervise. Children who feel truly witnessed by their parents build a stable internal sense of worth that doesn't rely on external approval. Wednesday's composure in social situations, her complete indifference to peer judgment, stems from this. She isn't performing toughness. She simply doesn't need outside validation. She already has it at home. When Wednesday and Pugsley perform at the school play, the entire family cheers while others sit in shock. Gomez and Morticia don't apologize for their children, they celebrate them. Even when things go wrong, the response is calm discussion rather than anger, with the focus on family unity rather than punishment. Wednesday and Pugsley constantly try to harm each other, It's their version of play. Yet underneath is unmistakable loyalty. They operate as a team when it matters. Sibling conflict is developmentally normal. What counts is the underlying alliance. Do they have each other's backs? Do they accept each other fully? For Wednesday and Pugsley, yes. Their bond is rough and strange, but close, understanding, and protective. That's a strong sibling relationship, just expressed in Addams style. The Addams family doesn't stop at the immediate household. There are cousins, grandmothers, uncles, and relatives of uncertain taxonomy. And the way the family treats all of them says something important about what acceptance actually means. The Addams family doesn't end with Gomez, Morticia, Wednesday, and Pugsley. Their household is a sprawling network of relatives and helpers, some blood-related, some not, each more eccentric than the last. Uncle Fester, cousin It, Lurch, Thing, Grandmama. All of them fully embraced. Nobody mocked, nobody sidelined, nobody made to feel like an outsider. In the 1991 film, Fester has been missing for 25 years. When a con artist impersonates him to steal the family fortune, Gomez opens his arms without hesitation, full of joy, full of nostalgia. No interrogation, no suspicion, no waiting period. Family is family. Fester is chaotic, unpredictable, prone to wild schemes. None of that changes how he is received. He is cherished exactly as he is. Most families have conditions, spoken or not, on how much strangeness they will absorb from a relative. The Addams family appears to have none. The question is never, are you acceptable, but simply, are you here? Cousin It is covered head to toe in hair and speaks in rapid, unintelligible gibberish. The family understands him perfectly and treats him like any other relative. In the film, Tully dismissively hands Margaret off to dance with It, essentially using him to get rid of her. What happens instead is that It's warmth wins her over completely. By the end of the film, Margaret, who was initially unsettled by everything about the Addams family, has fallen for him and joined the clan. She's there in the finale, still in her pink, sparkly style, and she's welcomed without condition. Nobody asks her to change. Nobody references her earlier judgments. Acceptance turns out to be contagious. She accepts them, they accept her, and the whole thing resolves itself without drama. Lurch and Thing aren't even blood relatives, they're staff, but they are treated as cherished members of the household. Lurch is included in every family moment with respect and genuine affection. Thing is loyal, inventive, and relied upon. Nobody barks orders or demeans them. They are thanked, joked with included. Grandmama, with her potions and particular habits, is equally integral. Her quirks are not a source of eye rolls or embarrassment. They are simply part of who she is. In many families, relatives who don't fit the mold are quietly managed, tolerated at gatherings, kept at a distance, occasionally a source of private embarrassment. The Addams household operates on an entirely different premise. Belonging is not conditional on being comprehensible to the outside world. It's not conditional on anything. Research on family cohesion consistently finds that when all members feel genuinely valued, not despite their differences but including them, it builds resilience, reduces internal conflict, and creates a powerful and durable sense of belonging. The Addams family has no toxic relatives, not because everyone is easy, but because judgment is simply not part of how they operate. And without judgment, toxicity has nowhere to take root. This acceptance doesn't stop at the front door. It shapes how the Addams family moves through the outside world, the world that finds them, at best, baffling and at worst, terrifying, which is where things get interesting. The Addams family doesn't hide. They don't try to blend in, explain themselves, or sand down their edges for public consumption. They exist, fully, unapologetically, and let the world react as it will. In the 1991 film, the family's relationship with the outside world is established early. Gomez regularly puts golf balls through the windows of his neighbor. the very judge who will later strip the family of their home. The Addams don't treat this as provocation. It's simply part of their ordinary day. When outsiders enter the house, it's usually to exploit the family's strangeness for their own ends. The Addams don't respond with aggression, lectures, or desperate appeals for acceptance. They greet hostility with curiosity or indifference, and continue being exactly who they are. In Addams Family values, this dynamic sharpens considerably. Camp Chippewa runs on enforced positivity, cheerful counselors, mandatory songs, a systematic mission to smooth out every difference until everyone fits the same mold. Wednesday and Pugsley are ostracized immediately. Wrong skin tone, wrong clothes, wrong interests. They get locked in the Harmony Hut and subjected to a loop of saccharine films until they conform. They don't conform. At the camp's Thanksgiving pageant, Wednesday walks on stage and instead of delivering the expected lines, speaks entirely for herself, calmly, without raising her voice. Dismantling the entire logic of the camp piece by piece. The forced cheerfulness, the enforced sameness, the cruelty wrapped in ribbons. It's not a teenage outburst. It's a precise and cold-blooded takedown. They leave not by fighting for validation, not by begging to be accepted, but through quiet rebellion and complete self-possession. They never wanted Chippewa's approval. They didn't need it. The villains in both films are interesting precisely because they are, on the surface, the normal ones. In the 1991 film, Abigail and Gordon infiltrate the Addams household behind a facade of respectability. Their normalcy is entirely transactional, a tool for control and theft. Abigail manages Gordon through belittlement and manipulation. The performance of family is there, the substance isn't. In values, Debbie Jelinski presents as pastel perfect and is a serial killer. She cannot tolerate anything outside her narrow idea of acceptable, so she eliminates it. Neither antagonist could exist in the Addams household. Not because the Addams are naive. Morticia, as we've seen, watches and draws her own conclusions, but because the family's internal culture doesn't reward performance or punish honesty. There is no gap between who they are privately and who they are publicly. That gap is precisely where the villains live. Family therapist Murray Bowen described something he called differentiation of self, the ability to know who you are clearly enough that other people's judgments, pressures, and reactions don't destabilize you. You can engage with the world fully without being reshaped by it. The Addams family has this in abundance. They have strong boundaries without walls. They're not hostile to outsiders, not avoidant, not closed off. They engage with warmth, with humor, with genuine openness. They just don't take the outside world's verdict on themselves as the final word. That confidence flows directly from everything we've seen. A marriage built on shared values, parenting that sees children as they actually are, a family network where nobody has to earn their place. The confidence the Addams carry into the world is not something they manufactured individually. It's something their family built for them. Which brings us to the question of how they handle it when things go genuinely wrong. Because the Addams family does face real hardship in the 1991 film, and how they respond to it tells us as much about them as anything else. When the Addams family loses their fortune and home in the 1991 film, the response is calm, unified, and almost entirely free of drama or blame. Through a court ruling, the property is declared to belong to the imposter Fester, and the family is evicted. They move to a rundown motel with almost nothing. Nobody blames Gomez. No accusations, no resentment, no score settling. The situation is accepted, and then everyone gets on with it. Morticia steps up without ego or bitterness. She finds work at a nursery school, without complaint, without waiting for someone else to solve the problem. Wednesday and Pugsley set up a lemonade stand. In their signature style, naturally. They treat the hardship as an operational problem to solve, not a tragedy to mourn. Thing becomes a courier. Even the disembodied hand contributes what it can. Gomez, meanwhile, sinks into depression. He watches daytime television, stops engaging, withdraws. The family doesn't pressure him. Morticia checks on him gently. The household keeps functioning around his temporary absence. He is given space to grieve, without guilt, without judgment, without anyone implying that his grief is inconvenient. This detail is easy to overlook, but it's one of the most psychologically significant moments in the film. A family that can hold space for one member's collapse, keeping things running, staying present, not making the person feel worse for struggling, is doing something genuinely difficult. Most families under financial pressure either demand that everyone performs strength or fracture entirely. The Addams do neither. Gomez never stopped believing Fester was alive. For 25 years, his room sat untouched, cobwebs and all, exactly as he left it. Fester was spoken of warmly, waited for, held in the family's ongoing story as someone who would return. The waiting is over. That's enough. This is an extraordinary level of sustained optimism. Not the naive kind that denies difficulty, but the kind that simply refuses to close the door. Psychologists who study resilience consistently identify this quality, the ability to hold on to hope without requiring proof, as one of the most protective factors available to families under long-term stress. Resilience is not the absence of pain. Gomez's depression is real. The loss of the house is real. The humiliation of the eviction is real. What the Addams demonstrate is something more specific, the ability to face difficulty without it breaking the relationships inside the family. Nobody fractures. Nobody turns on anyone else. The hardship becomes a shared task rather than a source of division, and shared tasks, research consistently shows, strengthen bonds rather than eroding them. They reframe without denying. The motel is temporary. The situation is solvable. The family is intact, and that is the thing worth protecting, not as a performance of positivity, but as a genuine orienting principle. When the truth finally emerges, the imposters are defeated, and the family reclaims what was taken. Morticia announces she's pregnant. The family that faced eviction with calm practicality ends the film with more than it started with, not just materially, but in what was confirmed about them under pressure. Everything we've looked at, the marriage, the parenting, the extended family, the resilience, comes into focus most clearly when you put it next to what the other families in these films look like. Which is where we're going next. The Addams Family is not presented in a vacuum. Both films surround them with other families, people who look, by every external measure, more normal. And the contrast is not flattering to normal. This is the satirical engine that Charles Addams built in 1938, and that both films keep running. The strange family is the healthy one. The respectable families are where the real dysfunction lies. Tully Ford is the Addams family lawyer, trusted, professional, socially respectable. He and his wife Margaret represent exactly the kind of couple that would have appeared in a 1960s sitcom as the ideal neighbors. Presentable, conventional, appropriate. Tully is running a fraud. He's using his position of trust to steal from the family that relies on him. His marriage to Margaret appears functional from the outside and is hollow underneath. He dismisses her, uses her as a social accessory, and treats her with barely concealed contempt. Margaret's story resolves unexpectedly. Tully palms her off to dance with it to get rid of her, but it turns out to be attentive and genuinely interested in her, and that is enough. They find common ground at the party itself, and by the finale Margaret is part of the family. The Tully and Margaret dynamic illustrates something psychology has documented extensively: the gap between how a relationship looks and how it functions. High conflict, low intimacy partnerships often maintain a convincing surface. The performance of respectability can run for years, while the actual relationship has long since emptied out. Nobody inside is being seen. Nobody is being honest. The form remains, the substance is gone. Abigail Craven and her son Gordon, the imposter Fester, are a study in what happens when the performance of family becomes a tool for control. Abigail manages Gordon through belittlement and manipulation. She defines his worth entirely in terms of his usefulness to her. He has no independent standing in the relationship, no perspective that matters, no feelings she acknowledges. When he begins to genuinely connect with the Addams family, she sees it as a threat and escalates her control. What makes this particularly pointed as a contrast is what happens to Fester inside the Addams household. Living there as Gordon, with no memory of who he really is, he encounters for the first time something that functions like genuine family. He is accepted without condition, not managed or diminished, simply included. And it is precisely that warmth that eventually helps him find his way back to himself, to Fester, the person he always was. Put these families next to each other and a clear picture emerges. The Addams are strange, dark, and frightening to outsiders. The other families are presentable, conventional, and socially legible. And the Addams family is, by every psychological measure that actually matters, healthier. They communicate honestly. They don't use each other as instruments. They don't perform closeness while practicing distance. They don't require anyone to earn belonging or maintain an acceptable facade. Their relationships have substance, not just form. We tend to judge families by what we can see, how the house looks, how the children are dressed, what the parents do for a living. But none of that tells you whether people inside feel safe being honest, whether each person has a place that doesn't have to be earned, whether the family holds together or fractures when things go wrong, or whether someone can struggle without being punished for it. By those measures, the Addams family is not the nightmare. It's the aspiration. We started with a provocation. The Addams family is the family of your dreams. It sounds absurd. A crumbling mansion, a carnivorous plant collection, children who consider electrocution a hobby. But underneath all of that, a marriage built on genuine mutual respect and shared values. Parents who see their children as they actually are. A household where no one has to earn their place. A family that holds together under real pressure without turning on itself. And a confidence in the world that comes not from needing approval, but from not needing it. None of that requires a Gothic mansion. It requires something considerably harder to build. Which is perhaps why, 60 years after Charles Addams first drew them, we're still watching.